start to put tension on my string drawback, I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop.
It's him. You can look at the horns when he's dead. I'm in the zone. Let the arrow go is perfect.
So when they lose their front doors, that's how you know it's smoke.
Went about 5-10 more yards. We probably went 20 yards, a little step over, tried to get back up. I saw him pull up.
We rushed 4 meters rods that night. We got like 166 and something like that, and then the next day we came up to 163 even.
You're listening to the White Cat Outdoors podcast, bringing you to the table where we talk about the outdoors.
Could we just get a quick moment of silence for all of the double-digit podcast numbers? Because we're way beyond that. We're into triple digits, so let's just take a second. Beautiful. That's
Thank
great.
you.
We made it. We made it, guys. Episode 100. Nick and Tom are both here.
We are.
Gang's all here for episode 100.
How could you miss it?
You can't beat it. You really can't. So yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to say other than that. Like, we're here. And we kicked around the idea. You guys did such a great job of sending in so many ideas, and we had a lot of irons in the fire on that one for episode 100, making it super special. But we figured, what better way to make episode 100, really, really special, other than having one of our own kill a monster buck, biggest they've killed to date, and talking about it for episode 100. What can you think?
It doesn't get better. No,
it doesn't. It really
doesn't.
Really just getting it back to the roots of what we're all about, killing big bucks, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So who did it?
I did. Well,
we did.
Who did?
Nick, why don't you tell the story?
Yeah. So this
There's
all
three
started
parts to the
about
story.
5 years ago. Start at the end and, refer back to the beginning. But no, I think this buck here, Tom, I do believe you should start your story about 5 years prior.
Yeah.
I think you should start there to really bring everybody full circle with what this deer means to you and to us in general.
Okay, so as you know, the White Cat Outdoors headquarters was gifted to me and Nick by my father and uncle. It's been in this. We're the third generation owners. It was originally my grandpa's and his business partner, then my dad and uncle, and now me and my brother. So we've had the property for,
I think, since 2019.
Since 2019, so 4 years.
Yeah.
A year or two before that, me and Nick and Frank started hunting it. And
Well, when we first started showing interest, we were told by Frank's dad and our dad that, there's not many deer up there. And if you do find deer, they're, spikes, maybe a forkhorn if you're lucky, and a lot of does, just because the Canadian longbeards have overrun the property. Trespassing was at an all-time high.
It was kind of like this 116 acres was more or less public land.
Yeah, it was free for all.
20 years before we started hunting it. I mean, like Nick said, trespassers, out the door, poaching, you name it, all that kind of good stuff, because it was never monitored. Mm-hmm. And they knew owners were from out of town. So we started going up there. Dad told us, you're wasting your time. You're not going to get a big buck up there. There's the bucks up there, if you see one, are going to be small. And me, Nick, and Frank decided, you know what? We're not going to listen to any of it.
Screw you. We're doing it.
And we're going to do our best to make this 116 acres a prime spot to deer hunt.
Putting in motion, I think we should call it Boontown.
Boontown.
Boontown? I like it.
I think you got to wait till you kill a booner to call it Boontown.
Any big buck's a booner these days.
That's true. People have kind of thrown
It is
the
a-
actual
it's a
score
loose
by the
term.
wayside.
Yeah.
If it's over like 130, people are saying booner.
Absolutely. So this one, it's not 130, so we'll
We
call
can't
it,
call it a booner.
Pope and Young.
It's a poper.
Yeah, Poper.
Poper.
It's a Poper. So the first couple years,
I met a lot of relatives I didn't know I had.
Yeah.
The first couple years.
yeah, my uncle from Girard lets me hunt here. I'm like, oh, really? Because it's actually my uncle and dad that own it. And I don't have any cousins that or
live
you.
around this area.
So, yeah, it's definitely not your uncle from Girard that owns this property. So we had a lot of that. Actually, I had one guy, I was in my tree stand hunting, and it's like opening day, 8 o'clock in the morning, and I see this guy come pushing through the beaver swamp that I'm hunting. Like, I'm right on the edge of this swamp bedding, and here comes a nice orange hat right through the middle of it, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, that's dandy. So I climb down and go over, talk to the guy, and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just putting a drive on for my buddy. I'm like, I'd appreciate it if you did a drive on your own property. Like, I'm right over there trying to hunt. And he's like, oh, no, they moved the property lines a few years back.
It's a thing they do often.
I've never heard of anybody moving property lines. But luckily, I had a map in my backpack with property lines on it. And I'm like, we're here. Here's the property line. See where there's that row of white stakes? That's the property line on the other side of it. Because you're 70 yards from the property line. So that was real nice. We found, I don't know how many gut piles in the heart of our property, like 400 or 500 yards from any property line.
Tree stands.
Yeah, tree stands, you name it. So the first couple years, we were just trying to build our presence up there, keep trespassers off, and we really didn't do a heck of a lot for deer management.
Or seeing much for, I mean, we saw some deer, but like,
yeah, if you saw a buck, you shot it.
Yeah.
Basically how it was. And I think we did that for a couple years. And then 3 years ago, we kind of decided, you know what, we're going to see, if we can start producing bucks up here. So we started doing food plots.
Yeah, we've talked pretty extensively about all the different food plots that we've done.
And even when we just started with the food plots, we started right away getting pictures of better bucks. But by October, they had moved out. We didn't see them anymore. So it was like a summertime property.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then we kind of got to thinking, okay, there's big bucks in the area. How do we keep them on the property?
Fence.
That's one way to do it.
It's a preserve.
Yeah.
So a couple years ago, we decided we had this big field. It's probably 15 acres.
If roughly.
And it always got mowed for hay by one of the neighboring farmers that never had permission to take hay off this field. It wasn't even hay. I don't know what.
It was just
he
bedding.
Was cutting.
He was cutting. It was cutting for bedding.
So we told him that
Cow bedding, not deer bedding, of course.
we were gonna try and make this a good whitetail hunting property, and asked him if he could no longer mow our field. So we have 1, 2, 3 food plots, 4 now.
All little ones.
Yeah, in that field. In the rest, we have let grow up. And what we let grow up, we've planted thousands of oak trees,
pine trees,
fruit bushes. So now what was once a big open field, it's not prime bedding yet, but it's definitely getting much thicker. Deer are bedding in it now. We did that. We put in, me and Nick did, I don't know, probably a 5 acre.
Yeah, roughly 5 acres.
Hinge cut. Just made a thick, nasty mess of down trees and tops.
With trails all through it now. We found out later and closer to like August this year.
Yeah, they're definitely utilizing that. Another thing we did was our prime beaver swamp bedding was getting overrun by beavers, which was turning the bedding into
Water
ponds.
Making it duck bedding.
Yeah. So took a bunch of beavers out in the trapping season, which now we have it contained to 3 smaller ponds rather than one
Which is
enormous.
productive. It helps.
Yeah, it
push
creates
the deer.
pinch points, and there's
Gives a water source on the property.
yeah. You definitely, beavers are a great friend to a deer hunter,
Definitely.
but you have to keep them in check.
Yeah.
You gotta let them know who's boss.
If you don't keep them in check, they'll turn your prime red brush swamp into a pond.
Yeah.
So that kind of got overrun, got the beavers in check. Now we have that bedding back.
And it's starting to look pretty prime now.
Yeah.
All the while, we built a cabin.
Yeah, we did.
When we first started all this, we had nowhere to stay.
We'd do our morning hunt, go back to the truck, sit there till noon when the French Creek Tavern would open, drive down there, get a what the club is it?
It's a club sandwich.
Club sandwich.
And a Pepsi,
On the rocks. And because we weren't,
weren't even
21 at
21.
the time. I think Frank was the only one that was.
Not
When
right
we
away.
first started, I wasn't 21.
I was 16.
And I'm
so
27 now.
So Frank was like 19 when we first started going. I was 16.
Yeah, so we'd hunt till 10, sit in the truck till noon, go down to the tavern, drive back up to camp.
Always put Splenda in somebody's straw if they went to the bathroom.
Yeah, classic joke. So now you've heard the episode where we built the cabin. That's the headquarters. Now we hunt till 10 or so still. Go back up to the cabin.
Cup of soup, maybe.
Cup of soup, yeah.
Tom's
nap,
got coffee
take a nap.
percolating.
It's all good.
Yeah.
And I'd say for the past, like I said, 3 years, we've kind of been, okay, now we're going to try and see, now that we got our food plots, we got bedding, we're going to see if we can't produce some better quality deer.
Quit shooting the first spike that runs by.
Yeah, so we started.
Wait for the second spike.
Yeah. You can't give them too many chances to walk by because then they get stupid.
It was kind of my green card.
Yeah.
Anyways,
So started, we got more into the cameras. We always put 1 or 2 up, but I think this year we have 6 up there. And year after year, we've been getting better bucks and more bucks and bucks hanging around.
this
Longer
year,
and
I would say
longer.
this year was the first year we were getting daylight photos of bucks in October, November.
Definitely November.
Like
we've never
maybe
past
October-
the second week of archery. It's always dead.
And then, it would be, like you said, dead, and then you would catch the random buck running through during rifle. This is the first year we had, like, legitimate chasing and bucks being seen daily in November.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. So this year we had kind of put together a hit list. We had 3 like nice bucks, and then a handful of those 2.5-year-old 8 points, 16 inches wide, and a bunch of spikes, 4 points, pile of doe. We actually have quite the deer population up there now, which is nice. I think opening night you saw like 11 or 12 deer.
Yeah, I saw a lot.
So
In just a
it's-
couple hours in the evening.
Yeah. So in just a few short years, we've turned this property from, a 4 point being a nice buck. If you could get a basket 6, like a yearling
man.
6, that was,
King shit.
yeah. So now we pass those up, and Saturday morning, I smoked my best buck to date up there. So that was a lot of hard work.
Hell of a story.
a lot
Thanks,
of time.
Tom. Let's wrap it up here.
A lot of hard work, a lot of time, but I'm glad to see that our efforts are finally starting to pay off.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
So, you
yeah,
shot your
Nick,
buck.
you weren't there, so why don't you ask?
Okay, let's start off. Friday night, you guys, typical cabin rituals and stuff. We won't get into details. So where'd you hunt Saturday morning?
So about six years ago, when we started hunting this property, there was an old ladder stand put up by my uncle. That when we started, he hasn't
It
hunted
had been
it.
there for years.
Yeah.
When we started.
Yeah, he was long since not hunting the property when we started. So Nick took this ladder over in morning sit, evening sit, morning sit, evening sit. Nick was in his ladder, and he was in that ladder for I
Up
would say
until last year,
90% of the time.
Yeah, last and I was only in it once this year, and I think 2 or 3, maybe 3 max last year.
Yeah, you weren't in it a lot last year. So it was the last 2 years. Nick finally vacated that stand and said, "That's junk."
I wouldn't say junk. I just
You put up 2 other stands not far away because that one just wasn't it.
yeah. Well, yeah,
3 within 100 yards.
Yeah.
debatable.
Man.
You're-
2 of them are within 100 yards. One of them
Maybe
maybe 125.
Yeah. So
But 2 of them are food sources that I put in.
Yeah.
we put in.
Oh, we're going to throw lots of wees around here.
So me and Frank were up at the cabin, drive down to the old French Creek Tavern for just one. We actually did. We were good. We just had one.
Don't
And-
believe it.
No, seriously.
Tom had more than one.
No, I did not. Not at the French Creek Tavern. I absolutely did not. Frank wouldn't let me. He wanted to get home back to the cabin.
I think that he might be telling the truth. I know he was buzzed though.
Yeah. Yeah.
What you drink at the cabin beers don't count towards your score.
No.
They count towards the buzz, but not. You don't count them. They just count.
So, like I said, we had one at the tavern.
We know Tom's never been good at math.
Drove back to Shooters, and I did have several more that evening before bed. And wasn't sure where I wanted to hunt in the morning. Woke up early, about 5 o'clock to get the coffee rolling.
Slight headache.
Yeah, a little bit hungover.
I think it's the carbon monoxide.
Yeah. I wasn't as spry and chipper as I normally am. Not much ambition to take my mobile setup and find a tree to climb or even sit in a lock-on for that matter. Just
keeping it easy.
Just wanted something nice and comfortable where I could just hunker down and have a comfortable hunt. So I decide what other better spot than Nick's Ladder. It's I don't
Easy,
know,
right off the trail.
100 yards from the road maybe.
If that, yeah, it's not far. It's basically there's an old gas well in the woods, so there's a really nice trail to follow in. It's one of the main reasons I do like that stand is because it's so non-invasive. That's exactly what I was thinking. Non-invasive. You can easily sneak in and out without really disrupting much at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's 30. You can shoot the trail you walk in on. The trail's 30 yards. So you walk beautiful old logging road. Cut off towards the end, 30 yards. You're in a nice ladder, ready to go. So I've only hunted this stand a couple times, and every time I can't find it. It's always further down the trail than I remember. So I'm walking, and I'm like, all right, this is where I would normally cut in. So I walk a little bit further and then cut in. I'm like, I'm going to be right on it. Still didn't walk down far enough. So I'm walking around with my headlamp trying to find this ladder, and turkeys fly out of the roost everywhere. There's like 4 of them roosted right by that tree. You know all them big beech trees?
No, not familiar.
Yeah. All the big beech trees right around that stand. Turkeys flew out of every single one.
I actually never look behind me. Always looking forward.
Yeah. Well, typically they roost on the hillside. I don't know what they were doing roosting down on the bottom.
Colder temperatures, move them down the hill, of course. Happens in
They're
the
just
mountains
like
with mule
fish.
deer. Yeah.
Makes sense. I didn't think
As
of it
the
that
elk,
way.
like as it gets colder and the vegetation line moves farther down the mountain, turkeys do the same thing. As it gets really cold, your vegetation line moves down, birds just roost lower down on the hill.
It's odd that you say that because as first light comes around, like a dozen turkeys fly down from the hillside where they normally do.
Yeah, but those ones probably roost higher up on the hill typically.
So
They did move down, just not
thank you
as
for
far.
this wonderful insight.
Yeah. Pro tip.
So I'm walking through and I'm like, all right, I'm in the middle of some action. And I'm a firm believer that I don't know how to put this without sounding stupid.
Probably sounds stupid. That's why.
If you're in the middle of like wildlife, you're gonna have a productive hunt. Like
I've always said that, yeah, if squirrels are moving, deer are moving. If birds are chirping, deer are moving. Like it does, there's correlation there.
yeah. So I had turkeys all around me. I had squirrels everywhere. I'm like, I got a lot of stuff going on.
Unless you kill at first light, very rarely do you not see any sort of wildlife, and then the single buck that you end up shooting is the first thing you see. Like I said, unless it's first light. But typically, the day you kill, at least in my experience, you usually see a lot of shit.
Yeah, I can second that. Most times, there is the rare case where you don't see anything, and then last light.
Coyote kicks something up. You never know. But I mean, it's in general, I do believe that deer are kind of, in all wildlife, are on the same wavelength when it comes to movement and activity.
Yeah. So I'm seeing turkeys. I'm seeing squirrels. Birds are chirping, flying around everywhere. Stuff's happening. I'm like, all right, this is going to be perfect. So about 20 minutes after first light, actually, let me backtrack just a bit, paint a picture. So there's this big goldenrod field behind me. Right smack in the middle, there's me in the tree stand that is Nick's. and then snap a straight line. There's another little hidden goldenrod field that we now have a food plot in. So I'm right in the middle of these two fields. And
it creates a little bit of a pinch between the two food sources. A very rough pinch, but you've got a creek bed.
Well, it's more. I was gonna say it's more of a pinch because of the creek.
Yeah, you're probably right because the pinch has always been there. That's why that stand's been productive.
Yeah.
You get basically and after that trail, it really drops down before it goes out to our other field.
Terrain change on the creek, and then a steep terrain change on the other side between the two fields.
Yeah.
So it's a little high point there that's easy traveling between the two.
Yeah.
so, and actually, let me backtrack to the night before.
Tom, you are the worst at telling
I
stories.
knew I started with that. Go from the beginning.
Well, I keep forgetting details that I'd like to bring up. So the night before, as I mentioned, I was a little bit buzzed, and when I do so, get buzzed, I like to tell Frank and Nick that I might shoot a spike tomorrow. I might shoot a doe tomorrow, and
That is true. He does say that.
yeah. And the night before, I was telling Frank, I might shoot a spike, and he's like, no, you won't. I'm like, no, I'm serious. I think I will. So.
I think I will the Paisley Road this evening.
Joe prerogative, sir.
So, like I said, 20 minutes after first light, I hear some crashing in the big goldenrod field behind me. And this spike comes running out, and he goes like right underneath me, stops 15 yards, broadside, head turns, looking the other way. And I'm like, oh, I could smoke you right now. Which, it's legal in New York. There's no antler restriction. So I'm thinking to myself, do I want to do this? And my bow was on the hook, but my hand was on my bow. And I decide, you know what? If you got to think about it, you probably shouldn't. So I release the bow, keep her up on the hook, and watch him walk off. And I was thinking to myself, it's kind of weird that I heard some crashing and then one spike comes running out. I'm like, I kind of was thinking he would have been chasing a doe. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't the case. I don't know. At this time, didn't know what spooked him. So that happens about 20 minutes later. From the same trail I walk in, here comes this. It was a bigger buck. It wasn't a big buck, but he had an actual basket to him. He was either a 6 or an 8. I don't know if he had brow tines. But he's walking right down the trail. If he keeps coming, he's going to come into my opening at 30 yards on this trail. And he stops at like 70 yards, and he's not anywhere close to my scent cone, but he gets downwind of where I heard that initial crashing going on. And I'm like, he stops and puts his nose up. And I'm like, I know he's not smelling me. And I get to thinking, maybe there's a big buck up in that goldenrod field that kicked the spike out, and now this smaller buck is smelling something.
Caught the scent of a lesser stag.
Yeah, and he didn't like it because he kind of tucked his tail, and he didn't run, he didn't spook, he just changed direction and said, I am not feeling this. So then I get to thinking in my head, okay, I'm painting the picture. Now I'm certain there's a big buck up there.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, I got to get him out of here. I got to entice him to come see me. So I break out my secret sequence. My secret sequence.
Okay, let me interrupt
The
you.
sequence belongs to him.
Yeah,
but
this is my sequence. And I'll tell you guys this sequence because I want you to shoot big bucks too. That's just the kind of guy I am.
Such a great guy, Tom.
So I like to start off with a series of Doe Bleats. And I wasn't thinking, should have brought the call so I could show you guys, but maybe I'll make a video. It's a game changer.
Leave it in the comments if you want a video or not.
Yes, please. If I get 5 comments, I'll make the video.
One screenshot and I'll jump.
So, start off with a series of Doe Bleats. Wait 5 minutes or so. And then I like to do a trailing grunt, which is, meh, 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 like bucks chasing a doe.
Yeah.
So now
What grunt tube did you say you use?
I was using an extinguisher grunt tube.
Whose extinguisher on tube?
It's mine, but it was given to me by, actually, I don't know if it was given to me. I took it from you because you had 2 of them. I lost mine.
It's in Tom's possession now.
Yeah.
How it got there, who knows?
Yeah, that'll all come out in the wash. No, I had an extinguisher. I got Nick to get one because I was in love with this
So
car.
good I bought 2.
Yeah, Nick bought.
No, I think 2 people got it for me for Christmas.
Yeah, you put it on your Christmas list, and then Grandpa gave you his old grunt tube instead. So I was like, well, I'm going to... So Nick puts it on his Christmas list, and Grandpa's like, at that exact time, well, I have this grunt tube. Why don't you just have this one? So Nick's like, all right, thanks. So I was like, well, Nick wanted the extinguisher. I'll get it for him for Christmas. So I get him the extinguisher for Christmas. Then my grandpa also got him the extinguisher for Christmas. So now Nick had 2 of them. I had one. Frank, you have one, correct?
Lost it.
Lost, yeah. Well, so mine broke.
So if only Nick still had 2, I could steal one.
Yeah. Well, mine broke. Nick had 2 of them. I'm like, well, I did buy one of them. So Nick.
It only makes sense that you just take it back.
Yeah, Nick already had one. Was the one that I actually bought for him was still in the box? Like,
No, it's not. The one you bought's the one I use.
oh, well, you still had one in the box.
Why would I take them out of the box?
No. So I opened that bad boy right up. Well, I didn't
It's a
try and hide
collector's
it.
item.
Yeah, I didn't try and hide it. And I was like, hey, Nick, I'm taking this grunt tube. And I, okay. So it is his, but I've been using it.
Ipso facto.
I'm your boss.
So that's the story of the grunt tube. Like I said, a couple trailing grunts. And that lets the big buck in the area know, okay, there's a doe down there and someone else is moving in on my action. Typically, that'll bring them right in. But it didn't. Didn't this time. So I had to break out the further steps of this sequence. So now what I do is I go into a challenge grunt, like a real low, deep, long, 6 or 7 seconds. And then I throw in a couple snort wheezes, maybe one more challenge grunt. Let them know, okay, now that buck that was chasing the doe, he's down there and he smells another buck. Like I got to get down there and kick some ass.
Mm-hmm.
And that works almost every time.
Does. I've used that trick many a time.
But it didn't work this time. So I'm like, oh, man, really got to get creative. So then I break out the rattling bag. And I start, and when I rattle, I'm not quiet about it. I'm kicking trees and raking branches.
Got to paint the picture.
Yeah, making a very loud disturbance. And that gives them the illusion, okay, now there's 2 bucks down there with my doe. And I gotta get down there ASAP. And that didn't work either. So now I'm like,
Starting to think he's not over there.
yeah. So now I'm wondering, what the heck's going on? So a couple minutes later, I decide, you know what? I'm going to just do a couple more Doe Bleats. And that's going to make the big buck think, okay, those other bucks are gone. I'm going to move back in, get back with this doe. So that's what I do, a few more Doe Bleats. And it wasn't 5 minutes after that. And I have no idea. I don't think how the whole situation panned out. It had a whole lot to do with my calling sequence.
I don't think so, because I'm just going to interrupt you right here, because I think this is where I come into play on this deer.
Yes.
So I was hunting the other side of the property where I normally do, and real slow morning. I had one doe at first light come out, and I shouldn't say first light. It was a little after first light, but she comes out and into the food plot, and I'm like, not going to shoot her. And she walks out and gets right downwind of me and throws her head up in the air. And as soon as she put her head up, I grabbed my bow. I was like, okay, go ahead and snort and you're dead.
Please blow at me.
Yeah,
Make my day.
I was begging her, but she didn't do it, so she lived. Yeah, slow morning. I didn't see anything else after that, so I climbed down, and I'm walking down the road back up to the cabin, and like Tom was saying before, that stand he's in isn't too far off the road, maybe like 100 yards. And I get kind of in line with him, just like a little bit past him up closer to the cabin, and he was talking about the hill that you can see where the turkeys normally roost. And I hear a real loud crash up there. I'm like, what the hell was that? And I look over, and from the top of the hill, I can see way farther than they would have ever heard Tom's sequence.
I don't know.
Tough to say. But I see these deer come running down the hill. and I couldn't really tell what they were. They were about as far as I could see them into the woods. So I see 3 of them come rushing down the hill, and the last place I see them I was guessing to be about 80 yards from where Tom was at. I could almost see Tom. I could see the deer, and I'm like, oh man, these things are gonna end up right on him. Like they're gonna be right in his lap. So I stood there for a second, lost sight of him, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna head back up to the cabin, and that's what I'll let you take over from there, T.
So that same crash Frank heard?
I think it was me, honestly. I probably got him up and going. Even though they were about 300 yards from me, I think it was my presence that got him going.
Probably. So I heard the same crash, and I'm like, all right, we got some action. And it wasn't like 5 seconds later, this doe comes barreling right past me, like 6 yards. And she's hauling the male, and I hear brap, 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 right on her tail. And then here comes this spike. And he comes barreling right past me. And I'm like, oh, that must have been what all the ruckus was. Mm-hmm. And then from behind me where those deer were, I hear some more brap, brap. And I look over, and there's that big boy coming down the hill. Hot. And he gets down to the bottom of the hill, and instead of following the same trail those first 2 deer followed, he decided...
And they went right by you.
They went right by me. And then headed towards the hidden little goldenrod field in front of me. Mm-hmm. He gets down to the bottom of the hill and thinks, you know what? Instead of following that trail, I'm just going to cut him off, meet him right at the field. And I would have had no shot. It would have been 70, 80 yards. And he starts going that way, and I'm like, oh, no, I got to change direction. Break out the old, mind you, my bow's still up on the hook. And break out the old grunt tube.
How far is he from you at this point?
70, 80 yards.
Okay.
So I break out the old extinguisher and give one. Doesn't he turn on a dime and come hauling right to me? I'm like, oh, crap, I got to grab my bow now. So I grab my bow off the hook. By the time I have my bow off the hook and in my hand, now this deer's at like 20 yards, still moving. I'm like, okay, good, didn't see me. So no cover in this stand. I'm like, well, now or never. Draw back on him, and now he's like 10 yards. And I give him 3 maps trying to stop him. And
what does he need the map for?
Huh? No, that's the noise I make.
When they're hot like that, they don't like to stop. Sometimes it takes a real scream to get them to go,
and
what do you want?
It takes damn near an atlas.
Yeah.
That was a good joke.
That was a great joke.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
That joke's going to be so underappreciated.
I appreciate it. That is a great joke. That is comedy gold right there.
So, yeah. Thank you.
Episode 100, folks.
Sorry, Tom.
No.
Continue your story.
Keep going.
So
I'm sorry. I wasn't going to laugh this hard at it, but once you start laughing, it just compounds.
It's like a snowball effect.
Yeah, it just keeps going. That was a good joke.
Comedy gold. Jeff Foxworthy will be calling me for that one.
Oh, God.
Go ahead, Tom. Finish your story.
So my third, final, and loudest noise I make
You can't even say it now.
finally stops him. And he's at like 7 yards looking right at me.
I think next time I'm sorry. Next time I stop a deer, I'm going to yell Atlas.
That's not a bad idea.
Just get it right out of the way first thing.
He'll probably stop dead in his
He probably
tracks.
will.
Now, 7 yards, stopped, looking at me. And in my mind, real quick, I think, okay, he's literally right underneath me. I'm in a 15-foot ladder. Probably should aim high because it's, tough shot angle.
Yeah.
So I put the pin on him, touch off the release, watch the arrow go in behind the front shoulder. Couldn't really tell if I was high or low. And like I said, I used Luminox. I could see my arrow sticking in the ground and the deer's taking off. Didn't mule kick, nothing. Just took off like a rocket. And I watch him. He kind of runs right along the edge of the woods where the woods turns into that goldenrod field. And he's running parallel right with the edge, and he gets to the top, and he's not looking like he's doing real well. And then I lose sight of him. And about 5 seconds later, I hear what I think's a crash, but there's still that spike chasing the doe in that area. So I'm like, did he go down? Was that just a crash from
them running around?
I don't know. So climb down, look at my arrow, and there's white hair everywhere. I'm like, oh, son
That's
of a gun.
all over the
That's not what you want to see.
Just to clarify, this wasn't an albino deer you shot?
No,
Okay.
not albino. So
So the white hair does,
It's not a good sign.
it infers that it could be close to the belly.
Yeah, I'm thinking I didn't hit high enough, and I came out the brisket
Down low.
area and may have only got one lung. And I'm like, man, I knew I held the pin high, but you start second guessing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Arrow covered in blood, covered in white hair, and I didn't have like that bright pink bubbly blood that you like to see,
Yeah.
like the lung blood.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm really starting to wonder. It was more of like a dark brownish,
kind of dark.
almost kind of gritty looking blood. Now I'm thinking maybe liver. I don't know. So I stop right there, go right back to the cabin, pull in, see Frank standing on the front porch.
Yeah, I had literally just gotten back. I walked in, put a log on the fire, turned around to go bring some more wood inside, and Tom's pulling in. I was like, well, he either saw those deer that I saw and shot one, or he just pieced out right before they got there, because it was like almost
Where did you
immediate.
park?
Behind the round bales.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I
That literally means nothing to the listeners. That's just for my own brain.
Yeah. So I get back to camp, open up the door, and Frank's like, how'd it go? I'm like, just shot a good buck. And he's like, oh, man, that's awesome. And he knew I was serious this time because
He was missing an arrow.
I was missing an arrow. So I tell Frank, I said, all I know about this buck is he's tall and he's narrow. And I was thinking maybe it's one of the big ones we got on camera. Wasn't sure. So tell Frank the scenario, what happens. He's like, dude, that's crazy. I heard those 3 deer and saw them come crashing down the hill. Thought they'd end up right in your lap. I'm like, he did end up 7 yards.
Right in the lap.
So tell Frank, the whole story. And we give it what, an hour?
Yeah, just over an hour.
Yep. Go back to scene of the crime. Show Frank my arrow, all the white hair, not a drop of blood.
Yeah, and we had some tracks where he kicked up the leaves, and we had just a little bit of snow, and we didn't see a thing.
No. And
There wasn't enough snow to follow tracks in it. It was like a dusting here and there. There was a lot of gaps in it, but there was a lot of kicked up leaves, and we followed that. And
for like 30, 40 yards.
nothing.
And then we lost the kicked up leaves trail and still no blood. I'm like, oh, God, this sucks. And now you're really starting to second guess yourself. Yeah. And so I tell Frank, I said, well, I seen him kind of skirt the edge of this field. He got to the tip, wasn't looking real good, lost sight of him, and I thought I heard some crashing, but I'm not sure. I said, let's just walk through the middle of this field so we're not disturbing anything. I'll just peek out to where I last saw him and
just see what we see.
See what we can see. So
Maybe try to pick up his track or something.
yeah. So we do exactly that. I get to the tip of the field, and I'm like, there he is.
Yeah,
right
we
there.
didn't even leave the food plot, and he was laying just off of it. It was literally like right where you had last seen
Yeah.
him, he was done.
Yeah, from where I last seen him, he couldn't have gone another 10 yards.
Yeah.
And he's all piled up right there. Get up to him, and he was exactly what I told Frank. Really tall, pretty tight.
Really tight.
Best buck to date.
It was funny. Tom grabs a hold of him. He's looking at him, and he's just admiring the deer. He's excited we found it. He all of his worries of being low or whatever were gone. He was just excited, and I was like, oh, because he already shot a 9-point in PA. I was like, oh, you got yourself another 9-point. He's like, what? And rolls it over. He's like, huh, it is a 9-point. He had it in his hand and didn't even realize it was a 9-point.
That was the adrenaline.
Yeah.
But back to the shot placement, I had hit damn near perfect.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
I
was money.
Came in the top of the lung, smoked the first lung, clipped the second lung, actually just nicked the liver.
Just barely nicked the liver.
And went through the diaphragm and caught just the front edge of the intestines.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was smoked, double lung, liver.
Yeah.
See the deer laying there, and there is just a monster blood trail going from...
Like blood everywhere.
Yeah, so we follow the blood trail back just to see what the heck happened. And it was a very steady blood trail, but it did not start until 70 yards from where I hit him.
Huh. So you guys pretty much gave up on him, maybe just 15, 20 yards too short.
Yeah, well, we lost.
I'm just saying, like,
give up.
had you like just kept in that direction in 20 yards or so, you probably would have picked up blood.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all. I was just trying to paint the picture here.
Just because we didn't have blood for 40, 50 yards.
And then we lost his track, so we were like, well, he could have gone here, there, but Tom had a pretty good idea where he went. So
and I didn't want to follow that exact trail.
Not knowing
what was going on, so I wanted to stay off the trail, go through the goldenrod field where I'm not going to disturb anything.
And pick him up a little later.
Yeah. So.
But he went just over 100 yards, not much more.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that crashing I heard was him.
Yeah.
Because there was...
Could have been anything.
Yeah.
Did you hear a small crunch? That could have been anything.
So then I pull out the classic cell phone and send a very quick, blurry, terrible video to Nick of the deer laying there. And I think I held it on the rack for a half a second.
Not even.
I think the entire video was a half a second long.
It is great.
It was classic. So that's all fine and dandy. Phone starts blowing up. Oh, did you shoot a buck? You shot a buck. Who was it? You or Frank? And like, oh, it was me.
And then I sent him a real good picture of it. You could just barely see the one G2 in it, and it was just his body. And then he got pissed and started making phone calls.
So I'm 90% certain this is the biggest buck taken. Acting like 99%.
Well, we have a
certain.
rough score. Frank has a rough score.
And yours is bigger.
And yours is bigger by about 7 inches.
Yeah. So I think as of now, I'm crowned king of the cabin.
King of the cabin. Yep, that's the biggest one at the cabin.
But I tell you what, I was telling Nick, my intuitions are typically correct. Like my intuition to hunt his ladder stand. Mm-hmm. It's a good one. Yeah. I don't think my record is going to stand through opening day of gun. I really don't.
I hope it doesn't. Not to take anything away from you, but I hope.
I mean to take everything from you.
It's just a gut feeling I have. I told Nick the other day that's what I think is going to happen, and I'd be tickled pink if it did. Honestly,
that would be nice.
It's really something cool to see our progress and work paying off up there.
Yeah, definitely.
Getting bigger deer and actually holding them, sticking around the area.
Yeah, it's been pretty sweet to see. A lot of work, but it's paying off.
Definitely paying off.
Thanks.
What?
Yeah, I was just gonna say thanks for bringing in such a special episode 100 for us. I will mark it out there. Frank has still not contributed to the Deer Camp series.
You see, we were talking about this after.
Oh, here we go.
After last week, me and Tom were talking. Actually, I think we were up at the cabin, and I contributed $2 last year. Tom contributed $2 this year. So you need to contribute $2 next year. And if you don't, then you're off the podcast.
I also contributed to Doe.
You don't even know how to hit record on this computer.
We'll keep you on the computer. We'll just take your mic away.
No mic.
You just have to yell if you want to be
Just
on.
so you know, where Nick is going opening day, this is the spot I picked out for him. Just to make that clear.
It was a group effort.
No.
Sure
Frank was there. Nick said, "Tom, you got the good luck. You're telling me where I'm hunting tonight."
That's true.
Yeah, but then he kept asking me questions.
No, you're full.
He asked you what you wanted to shoot. You want to shoot a doe or a
No,
big
I'm
buck?
saying when we went down into the woods, he said that we ended up. You said you wanted to sit right on the edge of the field where the deer come out, and we were at least 80 yards off that spot because
I decided I wanted to go down.
You decided to
towards
give
the
me
old-
free range to pick where I wanted to go.
I wanted to be down by the old fence row, and that's where we ended up. And Nick goes, "This is a good rifle spot." I said, "I'd hunt there opening day." He said, "I think I'm going to."
And then I'm giving him the climber he's going to take in there. So whatever you kill is basically mine.
Hey, you want me to sight your rifle in for you too?
Yeah, wouldn't you, please? I actually have to do that. Right.
Yeah, that's tomorrow's project at lunch.
I definitely got to do that too. At lunch.
Yeah, I get an hour lunch, and I just drive home because it's like 2 minutes.
That's nice.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
I should bring mine to the college and start winging rounds around the college.
That's not a bad idea.
Wouldn't do that.
Could be fun.
So, you have any special remarks to leave episode 100, Tom, with your biggest buck to date, or two-state Tommy, you're learning to be called.
Yeah, take that calling sequence I told you guys, write it down.
Roll it up real tight.
Put it in your back pocket. Save it for a rainy day.
Or every day.
Yeah,
Every day you
every
want
day.
to kill a big
Yeah, I
buck.
tell you what, when I'm in the woods, I don't shut up. Especially during the rut, I'm calling constantly. And
Well, apparently it pays off.
yeah. I don't think it's ever going to hurt you. And another
It
thing,
could.
no. Not the way. Not if you follow my
Not
sequence.
if you do it right.
One thing I have been doing is, people when they break out their grunt tube, they do a sequence that sounds natural to them,
Yeah.
but it might not be natural to a whitetail. Just because it sounds good to you doesn't mean it means shit to a deer.
Yeah.
So what I started doing instead of doing what sounds good to me is I've been watching videos of bucks making vocalizations in the woods, and I try and mimic that rather than what I think sounds pleasing. Mm-hmm. And I do the same thing with turkey hunting as well. If I hear a hen calling in the woods, I try and mimic that sound rather than what I think sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
So you're calling deer now, not just deer calling.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for the first 100, and I guess here's to 100 more.
Yeah, we're definitely. Then there's going to be another 100 after that. So
Yeah.
if you missed the next 100, we'll hit you on the way
we'll
back.
pick you up at 300. So with that said, archer season is pretty much to a close at this
Winding down.
point.
Yeah, we only got a few more days in PA.
But rifle's right around the corner, so make sure you guys are all still getting outside.